Hey guys, what's up? It's Prison Mike here again with another video. So the last video, the Void Kill event video, I know was incredibly long. It was like 2.5 hours. It included a bunch of streaming from the actual Void event and then basic to kind of as many advanced strategies and things as I could possibly think of to hopefully give everybody a wide array of different things they could do that would be useful for kill events and try to just cover as many things as I possibly could. But I know that video went incredibly long, so I thought before I go into frenzy type kill event stuff, I wanted to just do like a brief summary video that's hopefully more of the high yield, absolutely must do and like must avoid type things, and make it a little more concise video here for you guys to just hit those highlights before moving on, so you don't necessarily have to soldier through a 2.5 hour long video. So, and I've said this many times before, but I just wanted to reiterate the importance of the number one thing to do in these kill events, any of them really, is simply score more points than you give up. And it sounds so simple, so easy, but time and time again I see people making a mistake, on purpose or accidentally not realizing, but people give up way too many points relative to the amount they're scoring. And so I talk about this a lot and give a bunch of different examples and strategies in that more detailed video, but that's really the biggest, I think, take home, is that you have to score more points than you give up. And it should really only take 1 or 2 fights to realize whether or not whatever strategy you're implementing is working, and if it's not, then stop doing it. Whether it's defending a certain way, attacking a certain way. Remember, for Void, there's none of that defending, attacking, kill point differentials. It's the same exact score whether you're attacking or defending, so you don't have to waste time or worry about if you're defending or not defending. You get half the points at the resource tiles, but it's relative to everybody, so it's not specific to attacker or defender, so there's no differential for that. So you can attack or defend, but you need to make sure you're scoring more points than you're giving up, and there's a lot of different strategies that you can use to do this. But there's a couple things that you have to do, or that you really have to, I think, avoid more importantly than everything else. And so the number one thing really, and this happens to multiple people every single event, I can guarantee you, so don't be one of these people, and that's don't get zeroed out in a Void event. First of all, you have real troop losses, so you can lose millions of troops, but not just that. I mean, you're going to be out of commission for probably a while, and then that's going to hurt your nation and your alliance. And what typically happens is it's going to be the more active, stronger people who find the people in bubble and are getting a lot more points and kills, which typically then really sways the battle one way. And so I've talked about all kinds of things, not staying in ammunition for any extended period of time, certainly not staying there when you're offline. When you bubble, log off, log back on right away to make sure your bubble stays up. But the most important thing and the simplest thing to always do is, and people just don't do this for whatever reason, but it can happen to you, so hiding your troops. That's really important. So hiding them in your alliance hall, the war factory, if you're in your own nation, or in alliance members cities who you've confirmed are bubbling for the remainder of the event and not going to port, where you're going to send your troops back to you, that type of thing. It's really that simple. If you do that, you're not going to get zeroed. You can leave just your attack fleet in your city, and that way, worst case scenario, something happens, a bubble doesn't work the way you think it does, you put on an 8-hour instead of 24-hour, you lose internet connection, whatever it is, the worst case, you lose, your attack fleet gets wounded, you don't have any permanent losses, and maybe you lose some resources, and you're also not giving up a bunch of points, so it's not a big deal. I can't stress enough, though, how important that is. It was really a poignant example of that for me this last event, because I was unfortunately out of the country. I had no cell phone data reception at any point during the kill event, and I had pretty spotty Wi-Fi, so I basically had like 1 or 2 fleets in my city during the entire event, at most, just in case, like an attack fleet and one other one. They had 2 C-41s in their city, so it just, or excuse me, 2 C-41s in their nation, so it was just not worth the risk for me. And I also was not able to be online that often, so it was extra important that I hide my troops so nothing disastrous happens. And in that last of the, I don't think I can show that head of state anymore, but so the last Void, yeah, so soon wrecked everybody as per usual, dominated, and then you can see there it was at about 700 million. So not only should you make sure you're hiding your troops and not get zeroed for your own sake, but I can tell you from a lot of experience that this is the way I easily get the most points in Void events, and for very minimal effort. Again, I had pretty poor Wi-Fi. All I did, basically post up between the 2 top nations. So for instance, let's just say like this is one nation right here, you can see the green dots, and then let's say over like right in this area here, down here, is the other top nation right here. I just post up right in between them somewhere in this area here. So you can hit right here, and I can hit all these down here. And I'm not worried about crossing the black dirt at all, so I'm just posting up somewhere in the middle there. That's basically what I did between their top 2 alliances, staying bubbled with 1 or 2 fleets available only, and then I just periodically popped online, looked to see if anybody dropped a bubble, and if they did, I was speed hitting multiple times and killing them all. And I literally can show you guys. So the highest yield thing you can do in a void kill event, don't get 0, don't get your bubble dropped and give up easy points, and find other people who do. You think about if you don't have elite teleports and speed ups, it's 2,000 gold and probably 3 speed ups, so 1,500 gold, so 3,500 gold, give or take, to port and hit somebody in a rapid fashion. Like somebody who's, for instance, hitting other people in your nation. And almost always, especially as time goes on, those people will wise up and not be hiding any troops in their city, so it's kind of just a waste of 3,500 gold for you to get very little in return. By far the highest yield thing you can do in these events is just periodically check to make sure bubbles aren't dropped. If they are, you're speed hitting those people. So you can see right here, one of the first people here, and this was, I think, actually Simoon and I, so I'll come back to that one, but let's see what else I got here. So this one of the people, and I think I only hit 6 people, like legitimately hit 6 people the entire event to get that 700 million, but I zeroed those people out. So this was probably one of the smallest ones, 716k on the first hit, and then I don't think I kept the reports for all of them, but that was one of them. I already showed that one. This one here, so this is about 1.6 million troops that I zeroed out over a couple of hits. And these are, again, all people that just drop bubbles. KL 1.5, again, pretty straightforward. These are people that just drop bubbles. I popped in, literally take 1 or 2 minutes several times. Ideally, if you can do it a couple times an hour just to check. If people drop their bubbles, hit them. If not, you're not doing anything. It's that simple. It's a cheap and very effective way to do it. It's the highest yield way to do it. Another 1.7. Then I end up zeroing out basically, and then another 1.4. So there's just basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there was a 6, but those are basically the people that I hit. And in so doing, I put up a ton of points, and it was really that simple. So I just wanted to stress the importance of not getting zeroed out, and you can see why, both for your own sake and because people are losing millions of troops. And so you can see, I think I showed these 3, like, so this person lost 800, their basically wounded was 388k wounded units that they can house there, and they lost 800k in the first hit. Then you go to the second hit, they're losing another 281k, then they have 270k surviving, and I kill another 179k, and you could see on all those hits they had 0 wounded units because their hospitals were already completely full. So I mean, and then basically killing off that last 90 units too. I just didn't bother to show all these hits. So I mean, people are losing well over 1 million troops. That's pretty devastating, and that's a massive amount of easy points too for me. And all it took was some speed ups, and I did that very quickly. Just a word of caution with this, I think that it's pretty obvious when somebody doesn't have a bubble up at the beginning of a kill event if it's a trap or not. For instance, if they've kicked out and burned 5 or 6 people before the event who didn't have bubbles up, but then there's this random 1 or 2 people who they for some inexplicable reason didn't kill, it's probably because that person's a trap, right? Like if you look at the hive and you see there's a bunch of active people everywhere moving around doing all kinds of the normal stuff that alliances are doing, rallies and so forth, they're active, they got 1 or 2 people who not bubbled, it's probably because, and then they didn't kick and kill them, it's probably because that's a trap, right? So if you're strong enough to break that, like I think Simoon attacked one of those obvious traps early on and wrecked it for the most part, because even if you have a dozen or 20 people reinforcing, if they're all a lot weaker than the person hitting, and there's only one C41 reinforcing, the person hitting is going to get a lot more kills. So that's another point that I'll kind of go into, and that's just that other than not getting zeroed out and hiding your troops, the other big thing, it's all about the selection of your fighting and your attacks to make sure that you're really getting the best matchups in order to win those fights and get more points than you give up. And so there's a ton of ways you can do this, and again, I have a whole 2.5-hour video showing different strategies and things for this. It's okay to try different things, but depending on your situation, every nation is going to have different strength matchups, but you need to make sure you adapt to this and that you adjust accordingly so that you can get the best ratios possible. And I just wanted to elaborate with a couple, so again, you can see actually, so with the one here, like they had only 600k, and they didn't have very strong players. It was Simoon and I, two of the stronger players. And if you actually just look, so you can see, we have A on active, right? So that's the other thing. So by the time I even get there, he's already basically wiped out pretty much all their front row. I got there kind of late. I don't think we even coordinated that. We just both hit the same person when I think they're bubble dropped or whatever it was. And a couple reinforcements, it was over almost immediately. And we had basically no troop losses and a huge differential in the points there, right? Because with A on active too, there was no point losses there for us. So that's like two strong people against a couple of weaker people. One of the other things I wanted to show, so in line with the whole trap idea, like if you hit a trap, so there are two options when that happens. A bubble drops, you're speeding in to hit, hopefully you can do some serious damage. Again, I was able to do that with multiple people basically zeroing them out, but eventually one of their C41s reinforces, and that's this one here. And what I want to stress just about this briefly is that there's a time to SOS and there's a time to retreat. This, if you look at the score here, was not a time to really SOS. This was a time to retreat. The reason I did the SOS was because I wanted to show an example specifically so everyone can actually see what I'm talking about and why that is. But so there's two people here. I'm hitting the weaker one who's got about 530k, and then almost the exact same number of troops are coming in from this really strong C41 who's pushing, over 1600 LRA, over 14 or 1500 melee HP. I think I had stronger damage stats than him for pretty much all of them, but that doesn't matter at all when they have way stronger base stats and Titans in play and stuff like that. So there's clearly not going to win against the C41. I'm just way outmatched. All right, so if you look at this video, so I'm here hitting probably my second hit of the group after I took out a ton of troops in the first one. The wolf, the reinforcement arrived at about 8 seconds there, you saw. So I can recall and retreat in 2 seconds. That's right. So if you look here, again, all the fights start actually 3 seconds up there, but at about 8 seconds, 9 seconds, he arrives. I still had 415k or so at that point. I can retreat at 10 seconds when I still have probably 400k troops. So I could just retreat there, lose very few troops, and I basically got all the points I'm going to get because, as you can see, I've killed all the front row of the enemies by the time he reinforces, and I've kind of killed most of the other troops. So now I'm basically just fighting the enemy's front row here, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of damage against them. I'm not going to score many points against them. I've essentially scored the points I'm going to get by the time he got there. So I should be retreating at that point. The time to use SOS is if that was like a C34 or a bunch of C34s or 32s or people that I can beat and get a ton more points, but I'm going to lose a lot of troops in the process. So this was not a time to SOS. This was a time to retreat, but I wanted to demonstrate that by actually showing the fight and why that is. And this goes into the idea of you could say I basically broke even on the score between them and me because I fought one person was much easier and one person that was much harder, and they had basically equal troops. So I got all the 300k of troop losses there basically before the other person even arrived. So there's no point in staying, wounding only 33k and losing all my troops, right? So that's the whole point of the troop selection and why you should just retreat and get out of there in that situation, not use the SOS. Just not losing troops is not the point of it, right? The point of it is to maximize your score but minimize troop losses in a selective fight. So I just wanted to stress that other point that I hopefully already made clear in the previous battle, but again, there you see that. One other example I want to show of this, just to drive this point home, from one of my prior fights in let's see if I can find it here, in one of our other Void events here. So this is one of the first head of state Void events, and it was basically just Simoon and I versus a bunch of people who were pretty strong. So this person on the top here, this Nav person, almost had the exact same stats as me. This Scout Me Bro person had almost the exact same stats as Simoon. And then the other 4 people, they have multiple people who were pushing like over 1k LRA and 800 melee HP at the time. And I was probably 1200-ish. Let's see, about 1200. Yeah, long range attack and over 1000 melee HP at this time. So we knew we were winning before the kill event even started. In this scenario, we were winning the kill event, but not by a lot early on. So you can do 2 things. You can have a bunch of people reinforce you, but there are going to be a lot of weaker people reinforcing you, and you're going to get a lot more points. Or you can just have 2 strong people fighting, and then you're going to risk some losses, but your point total is going to be much more favorable for your nation. Also, this was one of our first times doing this, and Simoon's super reliable, but I think I don't remember exactly if I gave him the wrong coordinates or something happened right away, so he was a little delayed in getting there. He luckily got there right after my Titans in plane died, so it was still like pretty much perfect timing. But had I been a little more on top of giving him, I think, a heads up, exactly when things were happening, he would have been able to get there sooner. I probably wouldn't have had any losses at all. But even still, I only had 85k losses. And if you look, none of them were above T10 even, right? So I didn't have anything above T10 losses, and we still scored basically double the points they did against a really strong group. And so that's the trade-off, and that's, again, just the point I'm trying to hammer home is more troops from stronger players is going to score you a lot more points relative to your enemies. So whether winning or losing doesn't really matter. What matters is the points, and that's why having more involvement of just a smaller number of strong players is really going to make the difference in the point totals if it's a really close battle. So if it's close, you need stronger players contributing more and less other people involved at that point. That's why you purge weaker players, and you don't want your weaker players fighting in kill events because they're just going to give up way too many easy kills, unfortunately, and that's just the way it is. So the two biggest points I wanted to stress with the whole ratios of getting more points than you give up are obviously not getting zeroed, hiding your troops, because that would be devastating for you, and then just this concept of strength versus enemy strength and how to optimize that as much as possible. Those are easily the two most important, I think, take-home points that you have to understand if you're going to do well in any kill events, but especially the void events being what they are with the actual troop losses, which I myself certainly prefer. And then again, just the other thing is to optimize your points and for effort, right? All I wasted was some speed ups the entire event, a little bit of time scanning the enemy nations, seeing bubbles drop, and then hitting people quickly. I wasted some speed ups, and that was all I had to do. I didn't have to port. I wasn't jumping around. I couldn't risk any of that because I had such bad Wi-Fi anyways, but it's that simple. So, and I scored a lot of points in doing that for minimal effort. So again, I basically hit a handful of people, all with a lot of troops though, because people don't hide their troops, and so that's a big mistake that will be very costly if you fall into that trap. And as I mentioned, just other things from the prior video, just to briefly reiterate, I would strongly recommend not wasting your money on those void potions. It's, I think, a huge ripoff, and you'd be better off using that to just double up on your new recruitment for the next event and score way more points in the recruitment than paying for those void potions and having to use a bunch of a bunch of speed ups for healing. So you basically pay double. So I would not recommend falling into that trap. Even if you lose troops, don't worry about that. Troops are very easily replaceable. Otherwise, just remember, as always, to communicate and coordinate with your team. Make sure you're buffed up appropriately. You're hiding your troops appropriately so that if you're attacking, somebody counterattacks you, you're not getting up easy kills. Make sure you're using your SOS appropriately and not wasting it unnecessarily. Make sure you're always keeping track of your fights. And if you're losing the point totals, you need to make sure you're adjusting. Make sure that your hospital wounded capacity, as you can see here, I don't have Brave Star assigned, so it's only 430k, but I have 0 wounded units. So make sure that you have your hospital capacity freed up, so that way if you either get attacked and are defending with troops, or even if you're attacking, if your hospital capacity is full, all those what would be wounded troops will now be permanently lost. So make sure you're staying on top of that as well. And then I go through in that video a ton of detail about all the many different strategies and things that you can do, so I don't want to belabor that point too much. You can see all of it in there as well, so it's pretty straightforward. Congrats to Simuno. So he actually won the entire event and got first place. Hopefully next time, if I have better in, I'll be able to give him a little bit more run for his money. He kind of smoked everybody and took it away pretty easily, so but he deserves it as always, so congrats to him. And then I ended up getting head of state because I think I was the second highest I think I finished third, I want to say, but I the second most for our nation, so I was head of state again. But one of these days maybe I'll be able to get closer to him and give him a run for his money. But as always, he did a great job, and our whole nation did, I think, a really good job. I don't know if they're watching these videos or not, but they're doing a much better job each event, I think, and we're doing a better job together also. But the last final thing I want to show for the kill event related aspect of Void is going to be a strategy that is really perfect for against those really aggressive and strong like C40, C41s that just love to attack and attack over and over again and are really trying to wreck everybody. And so it's something that it doesn't present itself as an opportunity all that often, but when this does happen, it's really one of those things where you're either going to get zeroed out horribly, or you're going to really ruin the day for potentially really strong like C40, C41 who's being super aggressive. And so this happened for the first time when I tried this quite a while ago. successfully against somebody who was a lot stronger than me. I unfortunately only have the third of their 5 attacks. The other 4 got deleted, which I don't know how that happened. I must have done something weird, but anyways, so if you haven't been in a situation yet, you probably will at some point as you develop and play in the game, where there's going to be one of those really strong and aggressive like C40, C41s who acts like they can absolutely destroy everybody, because they pretty much can destroy everybody. And so they will often send a first attack with their planes and titans and try to hit you. And if they do hit you with a fleet and you have a pretty full city there, before you know it, they're just speeding in 4 more fleets. And the reason they're doing this is they're trying to basically get all 5 fleets in there and waiting, so that way when you bubble, they still have those 5 fleets already through the bubble waiting to attack in basically one after another. And despite having the bubble up, if they got their 5 full fleets in there and waiting, it doesn't matter. Your bubble doesn't stop that from happening. And so they're doing this because they're trying to absolutely wreck every troop that you have, and they're doing this with the intention of zeroing out your entire city and killing everything. And they're taking a risk, though, because their second, third, fourth, and fifth attacks aren't going to have their titans in plane. They're only in their first attack. But you have to remember, if this does happen, you have to bubble before they finish their first attack, so that way they can't send that first fleet again and get it through your bubble, if that makes sense. So they hit once, and then before you know it, they're sending the 4 more fleets. So they've got 5 fleets basically waiting one after another with the intention of zeroing you out. And if you're flustered and you don't do things right, they could potentially go one after another and kill all your troops. But if you do this right, it's my favorite, and it's a great opportunity to really ruin their day. And so unfortunately, I actually have all the specs and everything that happened in this fight saved, because after I did it like months and months ago, it was the first time I tried this by myself. I didn't want other people from my alliance getting wrecked on accident while I was trying this potentially risky strategy, and I also wanted to see how well I'd hold up against somebody. And so I at least have the specs of the third fight, and this is actually the only fight I really lost any troops on, because they used the slaughter effect. So the first fight of the actual battle, though, that I don't have a recording of, I lost really bad, and I knew I would, because he had his planes and titans, and I mean, this person at this time was pushing like 1,600 mid-range attack and 1,300 melee HP. I mean, they spent hundreds of $1,000s in the game already. I mean, to be in a much newer nation and already this strong, they were the C41, and I don't think a single person in their nation was even a C34 yet at this time. So they were just spending like crazy, and money was not something they were concerned about. And so that type of person is never getting attacked. They're always doing the attacking and being the aggressor. And if they really want to make the most of things, they're used to beating everybody so easily that they're just going to send 3, 4, 5 fleets at once to try and really get the most points before that person can bubble. And that works a lot of the time. But if you do this right, you can make them pay, where they will lose a lot of troops, and they will probably not even score more points in the long run than you do. And so for when I was just a lowly C36 here, you can see I had okay Titans playing, but I wasn't even pushing 1,000 yet long range attack, 768 melee HP, so basically like half the strength of the person I'm fighting against, right? Like half their strength. Okay, so despite that, on the first attack they sent with their full fleet, 550k troops, whatever, Titans in play, and they scored almost 60 million points, and I only scored 15 million. So they basically scored 4 times the points I did in the first attack. But I kind of knew that was going to happen, and what I'm trying to test with this and see is basically with the next 4 attacks, can you make up for the point differential from that first attack? And if so, how close is it going to be? And so in that first attack, I basically, again, lost by 4 times the actual points, but I didn't lose any actual troops in that first fight, because I had my hospital opened up enough, Brave Star signed, and I was hiding a fair amount of troops in rallies. While that first fight was happening, as soon as he sped in his 4 fleets, I bubbled immediately, and then I canceled my rallies. So that pulled back a whole 2 extra fleets at that time of troops. And what I did in the second fight then, so the first fight ended, I didn't have any losses. The second fight immediately starts. Now I have the troops that survived from the first fight, plus the 2 rallies that I recalled, or canceled, involved in that second fight. In that second attack, he scored about 27 million, and I scored about 15 million again because I didn't have that many troops still there because I was trying to be careful. I didn't want to end up getting wrecked and losing a ton of troops. So he scored almost 2 times as many points as I did in the second fight. This is the actual third fight, and this is where he did the SOS. And you can see here that basically he ended up scoring about 24.3 million, and I think I ended up scoring about 53 million points here. So I scored a lot on this one. And this is the only fight again I actually lost troops because he used slaughter. So, and my biochemical hospital wounded had about 3K. So that means I basically had hit my wounded capacity and was dipping now into the hospital wounded limit, which is the 30K extra. So I was getting close. But each fight, while it was going on, I was speeding the heals for my wounded capacity. So I would go into my hospital, and I would speed if I had anything wounded, and I'd go in there and I would just select whatever was wounded, and I was speeding it. Even if it took, weeks of heal time, I was just speeding all that with Brave Star assigned the whole time for all of this too, to make sure again my hospital capacity was much larger, and I was speeding as fast as I could. So I was speeding for all this. So every fight, my hospital capacity was completely zero again, so I could refill at each fight. And that's why fight after fight, even though he was a lot stronger, he never killed my troops, and he was facing pretty large fleets that were half his strength. But without his Titans in playing, I was really able to hold my own pretty well. And so, as I mentioned in this fight, I was really able to kind of shift to where I scored, again, about 53 million points to his about 24.3 million. And then in the last 2 fights, I, again, was able to, because he basically had no Titans, no planes still, I was able to score about 31 million to his 14 million, and about 19 million to his 15 million, and that's because he actually on the 5th fight retreated pretty quickly, and so I actually lost a couple T1 through T3 because I didn't fully heal my hospital in time, because he retreated because he was going to lose terribly like he had in multiple other fights. So even, as long as you have your composure and you heal your troops quickly and you have enough troops there to kind of hold their own, basically he scored about 140 million, and I scored like 135 million, I think, roughly, when it was all said and done. So he still did score like 5 million more points total throughout this five battle exchange. But if you think about fighting somebody who's double my strength in a C41, I was basically almost able to break even with this strategy, and he in total lost 194,000 troops, which for somebody again like this, that's nothing. Like they can replace that in the blink of an eye. But it's the principle of it, right? Like, not only is it incredibly rewarding to watch a C41 have to retreat because they're getting beat so bad, but to be able to kill 194K troops permanently, all T12 and T13, is great. And I only lost about 42K total, so 1/5 roughly what he lost. But not only that, half of those were T1 through T3. So I basically lost 20K above like T3 only, which is, takes no time to replace with this type of strategy. So if you get somebody who's aggressive enough and they're really trying to send those 5 fleets, remember, you want to have troops there to engage them the first fight, knowing that you're going to lose that fight badly, but you need to have enough troops to entice them and to make the fight last long enough so that you can act accordingly by letting them get their 4 other fleets in. As soon as they're speeding those fleets in, when you're watching, you're bubbling immediately. You're hopefully have some rallies out where your troops are hiding. You're now going to cancel those rallies, or you can recall troops. But remember, if you're recalling troops from like mines and stuff, they'll actually join your current fight if they get there in time. So you have to be careful. You don't want way too many troops in that first fight, because you're going to lose that one, and you don't want the amount you have die in that fight or get wounded to exceed your hospital capacity, which for most people is probably like 500 to 600K roughly, somewhere in there, give or take a little bit when you include the biochemical hospital. And if you're using Brave Star, you for sure have a bit more leeway there. But anyway, so during that first fight, you're hopefully canceling some rallies to get more troops ready for your second fight. And then while every fight is happening, you are speed healing all of the losses that you had in your hospital back to full health, so that your next fight, when it starts again after 30 seconds to a minute or whatever, each fight. So like for this one, for instance, I had 250,000 wounded. I was speed healing those. That 250K is ready to fight again in the battle after this next one, right? So this is the third battle that you see here showing. the fourth battle starts after this one. I'm healing all these troops, this 250k. So after that fourth battle, when the fifth one starts, all those troops are ready again, and my hospital was not overflowing or not too full. So I hope that makes sense. Again, I'm sorry that I somehow managed to delete all the four other ones, which is a huge bummer. But it just goes to show that you can definitely hold your own pretty well with this strategy if you do it right. The drawback is if you do it wrong, then they're getting 5 fleets in to hit your troops, which is why you want to be careful with the amount you have there in the first place, just in case something goes wrong, so that you don't have like your full 2 million troops there and get absolutely like, you know, demolished with hit after hit. You want to keep a relatively like enticing amount to try and get them to attack and engage, but not so many that it's going to be costly, where if something goes wrong, you're losing like 1 million or 2 million troops actually. So keep that in mind. I just wanted to give you guys this last final strategy that I don't think I talked about previously, because it's pretty uncommon, because most of the time people are not that aggressive in Void where they're setting 5 fleets. That's something you see more in like Iron Blood and things where there aren't losses, but it's something to just keep in the back of your mind that if you do this right, you can really make strong players who are aggressive pay, even if, like I said, you're half their strength. So I know I was pretty sniffly for this video. I've been a little under the weather, so thank you guys for listening and putting up with me for it. As always, I really appreciate that. The final thing I just wanted to mention, because I think I forgot to, as I was kind of just thinking through this video toward the end here, is just if you look at some of the times here for these attacks, like they're all around this, you know, 238, 242. So some of them are for the same person, and 255 here. So the interesting thing about that is that's about 8 hours after the event started, which if you think about an 8-hour bubble, these 3 people here, the person at 238, the person at 242, and the person at 255, you know, those are people who probably all put on 8-hour bubbles right around the time the event started instead of 24-hour bubbles. And then, of course, their bubbles popped. They didn't get on in time, and they got completely zeroed out. So remember, people think it can't happen to them until it does. Put on a 24-hour bubble. Don't be messing around. Don't be silly, and hide your troops. Okay, guys, protect yourself out there and your nation. As always, I'm hoping that this video was helpful for you guys, and I appreciate you listening. Please comment, like, subscribe. Subscribing helps me a lot. That way you won't miss anything also. So definitely do that. And everybody stay safe. Happy hunting out there. Prison Mike out.